My son asked me for $50,000 for his wedding. I gave him everything I had, every dollar I had saved in 30 years, gone in a single moment. But on his wedding day, security stopped me at the entrance. "You are not on the guest list." I thought it was a mistake. I smiled politely and said, "There must be some confusion. I'm the groom's mother." The guard checked again. Then he looked at me with cold eyes and said, "Ma'am, I was told specifically not to let you in." That was the moment my heart broke. But what my son didn't know was, the next morning I made a decision that changed his life forever. My name is Margaret. I am 62 years old, a widow, and for most of my life, my world revolved around one person, my son, Daniel. After my husband passed away 25 years ago, Daniel was all I had left. I raised him alone. No support, no family help, no second chances. Just me and my little boy. I worked 2 jobs for most of my life. Morning shifts at a grocery store, night shifts cleaning offices. I missed sleep. I missed meals. I missed my own happiness. But I never missed anything for my son. When Daniel wanted a bicycle, I worked extra hours. When he wanted college, I sold my jewelry. When he struggled, I stood beside him. A mother's love does not count sacrifices. It simply gives. Daniel grew up to be a smart, charming young man. People loved him. He had confidence, ambition, and big dreams. And I was proud of him. Very proud. Everything changed when he met Vanessa. She was beautiful, elegant, and came from a wealthy family. Her lifestyle was completely different from ours. Luxury cars, designer clothes, expensive vacations. At first, I tried to welcome her warmly, but from the very beginning, I felt something strange. She was polite, but distant, respectful, but cold. She rarely looked at me when speaking, and whenever I visited Daniel's apartment, she made me feel like I didn't belong there. Still, I stayed silent, because Daniel loved her, and a mother wants her son to be happy. One evening, Daniel came to visit me. He looked nervous. He sat quietly at my kitchen table, staring at his hands. "Mom," he said softly, "I need your help." I immediately felt worried. "What happened? Are you okay?" He hesitated before speaking. "Vanessa's family is planning a very big wedding, very grand, but I don't have enough money to match their expectations." I listened quietly. Then he continued, "I need $50,000. The number shocked me. That was not a small request. That was my entire life savings. Money I had been saving for retirement, for emergencies, for my future. I felt fear rising in my chest. "I don't have that kind of money," I said gently. He looked down. "I know you've been saving for years, Mom. I promise I'll pay you back. This wedding means everything to Vanessa. Her family already think I'm not good enough." His voice broke, and when I saw tears in my son's eyes, my resistance disappeared. A mother's heart is weak when her child is hurting. That night, I could not sleep. I walked around my small house, looking at everything I owned, every piece of furniture, every memory, every sacrifice. All my savings were in that bank account. It was security for my old age. But Daniel was my son. How could I refuse him? The next morning, I went to the bank. My hands trembled as I signed the withdrawal papers. $50,000. 30 years of hard work. Gone. I handed the check to Daniel that evening. His face lit up with happiness. He hugged me quickly and said, "Thank you, Mom. You won't regret this." I believed him. I trusted him. I had no idea that this decision would become the greatest mistake of my life. After that day, Daniel slowly began to change. His phone calls became shorter, his visits became rare. Whenever I asked about the wedding, he sounded distracted. "Everything is fine, Mom, don't worry." Vanessa never called me. I was not involved in any wedding planning. No dress discussions, no invitations, no family meetings, nothing. Still, I told myself they were busy. Love makes us ignore warning signs. Then one day, a wedding invitation finally arrived, a beautiful golden envelope. My hands trembled with excitement as I opened it, but something strange caught my attention immediately. There was no mention of my name as the groom's mother, no special seat, no acknowledgement, just a simple guest invitation. A deep unease settled inside me, but I ignored it because I wanted to believe my son loved me. The wedding day arrived. I wore my best dress. I fixed my hair carefully. I even brought a small gift for the couple. As I reached the venue entrance, my heart was filled with pride and love. But seconds later, everything collapsed. I stood at the wedding entrance in complete shock. "You are not on the guest list." The guard's voice was calm, but his words cut deep. I forced a small smile. "There must be a mistake," I said gently. "I'm Daniel's mother." He checked the list again. Then he looked directly into my eyes. "Ma'am, I was instructed specifically not to let you in." Not to let me in. My own son's wedding. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The world around me seemed to stop. The music, the laughter, the sound of celebration inside, everything felt distant. I tried to stay calm. "Please call my son," I whispered. The guard hesitated, then stepped aside and spoke into his radio. Minutes later, Daniel appeared. My son, the boy I raised, the child for whom I sacrificed everything. But when he walked toward me, there was no warmth in his eyes, only discomfort. "Mom, what are you doing here?" he asked quietly. The question hit me like a slap. "What do you mean? I came for your wedding." He looked around nervously, making sure no one was listening. "You shouldn't have come," he said in a low voice. I stared at him in disbelief. "I received an invitation," I replied. He sighed impatiently. "That was just a formality." A formality? A mother's presence at her son's wedding was a formality? Before I could respond, a woman approached us. Vanessa. She wore a stunning white dress, shining with luxury and confidence. But when she looked at me, her expression carried no kindness, only irritation. "Oh, she actually came," she said coldly. Daniel gently pulled her aside, whispering something, but she shook her head. Then she stepped forward. "This wedding is a private event. We invited only close family and important guests." I felt my hands shaking. "I am his mother," I whispered. She gave a small, dismissive smile. "Yes, but this wedding represents a certain image. We cannot have anything inappropriate." Inappropriate? Was I that? A poor widow who worked her whole life? A burden? An embarrassment? I looked at Daniel, hoping he would defend me, hoping he would say something, anything. But he avoided my eyes. That silence hurt more than words. Guests began watching us. Whispers spread through the entrance hall. I suddenly became aware of my simple dress, my old shoes, my trembling hands. For the first time in my life, I felt ashamed of who I was. Vanessa spoke again, her voice firm. "Security, please escort her away." In that moment, something inside me shattered, but I refused to cry. Not there, not in front of strangers. I looked at my son one last time. "Daniel," I said softly, "I gave you everything I had." For a second, his face showed guilt, but it disappeared quickly. "This is not the right time, Mom," he replied coldly. "Not the right time." The guard gently touched my arm and guided me toward the exit. Each step felt heavier than the last. Behind me, the doors closed. Music grew louder. Celebration continued. Life moved on, without me. Outside the venue, I stood alone. The evening air was cold. My hands trembled as I held the small wedding gift I had brought. A simple photo album, filled with memories from Daniel's childhood. His first steps, his school days, his graduation, moments of love, moments that clearly meant nothing to him now. I sat on a bench across the street and watched the lights of the wedding hall. Guests laughed, cars arrived, champagne glasses sparkled under golden lights. A celebration built partly with my life savings, and yet I was not welcome. That night I walked home slowly, every step filled with pain, every memory replaying in my mind. The years of sacrifice, the sleepless nights, the endless love. Had it all meant nothing? When I finally reached my house, the silence felt unbearable. I placed the untouched wedding gift on the table. Then I sat alone in the darkness. For the first time in many years, I cried, not just from humiliation, but from betrayal. As the night grew deeper, something inside me began to change. The pain slowly transformed into clarity. I remembered the bank withdrawal, the $50,000, my entire life savings, money I gave with love, money that helped create the very wedding I was denied entry to. A realization settled in my heart. I had given everything and received nothing but rejection. That night, I made a decision that would change Daniel's life forever, a decision he never saw coming. The next morning, I awoke with a calmness I had never felt before. I dressed carefully, prepared my documents, and walked toward the bank. Because sometimes a mother's love gives everything, but a mother's dignity demands justice. And what I did next left my son completely speechless. The next morning, I woke up feeling strangely calm. No anger, no tears, no confusion, just clarity. The pain from the night before had hardened into something stronger, a quiet strength I had never felt before. I looked around my small home, the same walls that had witnessed my sacrifices, the same table where I counted every dollar to support my son, the same silence that now reminded me of what I had lost. And suddenly I understood something clearly. Love should never demand humiliation, and sacrifice should never invite betrayal. I walked to my cabinet and removed a small folder. Inside were all my financial documents, bank statements, property papers, account agreements, every proof of a lifetime of work. I carefully reviewed each page. The numbers did not lie. $50,000, my entire life savings, gone, given freely, and used to build a celebration where I was treated like a stranger. I sat quietly for a long moment. Then I picked up the phone. "Good morning," I said calmly when the bank representative answered. "I would like to schedule a meeting with my financial advisor." The woman on the line recognized my name immediately. "Yes, Mrs. Carter, we can see you today." Today. Perfect. I dressed carefully. not in my usual simple clothes, but in my best outfit. Not to impress anyone, but to remind myself of my dignity. When I looked in the mirror, I saw not a weak widow, but a woman who had survived everything and was about to reclaim her power. The bank building stood tall and quiet, a place where decisions shaped lives. As I entered, the cool air and polished floors reflected a world of control and certainty, a world where emotions had no authority. Only decisions mattered. My advisor, Mr. Reynolds, welcomed me warmly. "Mrs. Carter," he said with a smile, "how can I assist you today?" I placed my documents neatly on the table. "I want to review every account connected to my son." He looked surprised. "Of course," he replied. Within minutes he opened the records: joint accounts, transfer authorizations, future access permissions. Everything I had arranged years ago to secure Daniel's future. Everything built from trust. "Is there a problem?" he asked gently. I took a slow breath. "Yes," I said quietly. "I want to revoke all financial access." He blinked. "All access?" "Yes." My voice did not shake. My hands remained steady. For the first time, I was choosing myself. Mr. Reynolds carefully explained the process. Once revoked, Daniel would lose access to my accounts. Future inheritance plans would change. Property rights would be reassigned. Permanent decisions. Irreversible. "Is this indeed your course of action?" he asked seriously. I thought about the wedding hall, the closed doors, my son's cold eyes, Vanessa's words, security escorting me away like a stranger, and suddenly the answer became effortless. "Yes," I said firmly, "I am certain." The documents were prepared. Each paper represented years of sacrifice, and now years of protection. My hands moved slowly as I signed. One signature, another, and another. With each stroke of the pen, a chapter of blind trust ended, and a new chapter of self-respect began. When the process was complete, Mr. Reynolds looked at me carefully. "There is one more matter," he said. "Your house ownership is currently listed to transfer to your son in the future. Would you like to maintain that arrangement?" I paused. That house, the home where Daniel grew up, the place filled with memories, the property he always assumed would be his. I remembered his whisper at the wedding entrance. "You shouldn't have come." "No," I replied calmly. "I want to change the beneficiary." Mr. Reynolds nodded respectfully. No questions, no judgment, just paperwork. And with that decision, my son's expected future changed forever. When I left the bank, the sun felt warmer, the air felt lighter. For the first time since the wedding, my heart felt peaceful, not because I had taken revenge, but because I had reclaimed my dignity. But I did not know something important. Daniel would soon discover everything, and when he did, his reaction would shock me. That evening, my phone rang. His name appeared on the screen. Daniel. For a moment, I simply stared at it. He had not called to apologize. He had not called to check on me. He had not called after humiliating me. But now he was calling. Why? I answered calmly. "Hello?" His voice sounded tense. "Mom, did you visit the bank today?" I said nothing. "How could you do this?" he demanded. The panic in his voice was unmistakable. For the first time in his life, he sounded afraid. I spoke quietly. "I only corrected a mistake." Silence filled the line. Then his voice changed, no longer cold but desperate. "Vanessa is furious," he said. "The wedding expenses, the house plans,
Everything depended on those accounts. So that was the truth. I had never been family. I had been funding. I closed my eyes. My love was never an investment. And then I hung up. But what Daniel did next was something I never expected. Something that would shake my life once again and prove that this story was far from over.
The morning after Daniel's call, my house felt unusually quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that comes before a storm. I tried to focus on my routine, making tea, watering my small garden, arranging the old photographs in my living room, but something inside me felt unsettled. Daniel had never sounded like that before. Afraid, panicked, desperate. For years, he had spoken to me with confidence, sometimes even authority. But yesterday, his voice had trembled. I was placing my teacup on the table when the doorbell rang. Sharp, urgent, not the gentle ring of a visitor, the demanding sound of someone who believed they had the right to enter. My heart tightened. I already knew who it was. When I opened the door, Daniel stood there. But he was not alone. Vanessa stood beside him, arms crossed, eyes cold. Her elegant wedding smile was gone. In its place was something far more dangerous: anger. "Mom, we need to talk," Daniel said immediately, pushing past me without waiting for permission. Vanessa followed, scanning my modest home with visible judgment. I closed the door slowly. This was no visit. This was confrontation. Daniel paced the room. "Why would you do something like this?" he demanded. "You froze the accounts, changed the property papers, canceled everything." I remained calm. "I did not cancel anything," I said quietly. "I simply protected what belongs to me." Vanessa laughed sharply. "Protected?" she said mockingly. "You're destroying your son's future." Her voice carried the same cruelty I had heard at the wedding. But this time, I did not lower my eyes. Daniel moved closer, his tone softening. "Mom," he said gently, "maybe we misunderstood each other that night." Misunderstood. The word felt almost insulting. "You embarrassed us at the wedding. The guests, Vanessa's family, they expected a certain image. Image. Not love, not respect. Image." I looked at him steadily. "And what was I?" I asked quietly. "An embarrassment?" He hesitated. That hesitation said everything. Vanessa stepped forward impatiently. "Let's stop pretending," she said. "We need the funds restored. The house transfer must remain. That was the agreement." Agreement. I felt a strange calm spread through me. "I made no agreement," I replied. Her expression hardened. "You owe Daniel everything he is today." I smiled sadly. "Yes," I said, "and I gave everything willingly." I paused. "But giving is not surrendering dignity." Daniel's patience began to break. "Vanessa's family invested in the wedding," he said. "We planned our future based on your support." There it was again. Support, investment, financial expectation. Never love, never gratitude. I walked to the window and looked outside at the quiet street. "For years," I said softly, "I believed my sacrifices built a family." I turned back toward them. "But now I understand they built dependence." Daniel's face flushed with frustration. "So you're punishing me?" he asked. "No," I replied calmly. "I am correcting myself." Vanessa's voice suddenly became sharp and threatening. "If you don't reverse the changes, Daniel may face serious financial consequences." I raised my eyebrow. "Consequences?" She nodded coldly. "Debts, legal pressure, reputation damage." It was not a request, it was a warning. Something inside me shifted at that moment.
For years, I had feared losing my son's affection, but standing there, facing threats in my own home, I realized something powerful. I had already lost him, and strangely, that realization made me fearless. "You may handle your responsibilities as adults," I said calmly. Vanessa stared at me in disbelief. Daniel looked shattered. He tried a different approach. His voice softened, almost pleading. "Mom, I'm your only son." The words pierced deeper than anger. He stepped closer. "You wouldn't abandon me, would you?" For a moment, my heart trembled. Memories flooded back. His first steps, his first school day, the nights I stayed awake when he was sick. A mother's love does not disappear easily. But then I remembered the Wang door, the whisper, "You shouldn't have come." "I did not abandon you," I said gently. "You abandoned respect." Daniel stepped back as if struck. Vanessa grabbed his arm angrily. "This is pointless," she snapped. But before leaving, she turned toward me. "You will regret this decision," she said quietly. Her words carried a chilling certainty. The door slammed behind them. Silence returned, but this time it was heavier, darker, more dangerous. That night, I received several phone calls from unknown numbers. When I answered, the line would go silent, then disconnected. Strange messages appeared on my voicemail, empty breathing, whispers, and once a single sentence, "You will fix this." Fear tried to enter my heart, but I refused to let it stay, because something told me this conflict was no longer just about money. 2 days later, an official letter arrived, a legal notice. My hands trembled as I opened it. Daniel and Vanessa were challenging the financial changes. They were taking legal action against me, my own son, suing his mother. I sat quietly holding the paper. The final illusion shattered. The battle had truly begun. But what Daniel and Vanessa did not know was that I had already prepared for this possibility, and my next move would change everything.
The legal notice lay on my kitchen table like a knife pressed against my chest. I stared at the words again and again, hoping they would somehow change. 30 days. My own son wanted me out of my own home, the house where I had raised him, the house where his father had taken his last breath, the house where every wall carried memories of sacrifice. My hands trembled, but this time, I didn't cry. Something inside me had finally gone quiet. Not broken, quiet. And in that silence, a decision was born. That same evening, I called Mr. Thompson. He had been my husband's lawyer years ago, a calm, shark-minded man who spoke little but saw everything. He arrived the next morning, placing his briefcase carefully on the table while studying the legal notice. His eyebrows slowly lifted. Then he looked at me. "Margaret," he said gently, "did you ever tell your son who actually owns this house?" I blinked. "What do you mean? It's in my name." He sighed and opened an old folder. Inside were documents I hadn't seen in years. My husband's will, and something else. A trust agreement. He slid the paper toward me. "This house," he said quietly, "is not just yours. It's protected under a family trust your husband created before he died." My heart pounded. "A trust?" "Yes," he continued. "The house cannot be sold, transferred, or claimed without your consent, and no one, not even your son, can remove you from it." I stared at the document. For years I had lived in fear of losing everything, and all along I had been protected. A strange feeling rose inside me, not anger, not revenge, something deeper, justice. But there was more. Mr. Thompson cleared his throat. "There's also another clause," he said carefully. "If your son attempts to force you out or harass you for property or money, he forfeits any future inheritance from the trust."
My breath stopped. He forfeits everything. Everything. I sat back slowly. For the first time since my son had started treating me like a burden, I felt something return to me. Power. Not the kind that shouts, the kind that stands quietly and does not move. 2 days later, my son returned. He walked into my house without knocking, his wife behind him, arms folded, lips tight with irritation. "Well," he demanded, "have you cacked?" I looked at him calmly. "No." His face hardened. "You received the notice?" "Yes." "Then why are you still here?" I folded my hands on the table. "Because this house does not belong to you." He laughed, a cold, mocking sound. "It will be soon." I slid the trust documents toward him. "Read." The room fell silent as his eyes moved across the page. Confusion, disbelief, then fear. "What is this?" he whispered. "A trust," I said quietly. "Your father protected this home." His wife grabbed the papers, scanning them quickly. Her face drained of color. "This says you can't remove her," she muttered. "And more," I added gently. I watched realization hit them, like a wave crashing against stone. "If you attempt to force me out," I continued calmly, "you lose your inheritance." The silence that followed was heavy, thick, uncomfortable. My son's hands shook. "You tricked me," he said. I almost smiled. "No," I answered softly. "I simply stopped protecting you from consequences." For years I had protected him, from his mistakes, from his irresponsibility, from the truth. But love without boundaries creates monsters, and I was done raising one. His wife suddenly exploded. "This is manipulation," she shouted. "You're controlling him with money." I looked at her quietly. "No," I said, "I am protecting what my husband built." My son's voice cracked. "You would choose a house over your own child?" That question pierced deeper than anything else. For a moment my heart wavered. I remembered his first steps, his childhood laughter, the nights I stayed up when he was sick. But then I remembered something else. The message. "You won't be joining us. My wife prefers to keep things limited to real family." I met his eyes. "You stopped being my child the moment you chose cruelty over love." He had no answer. None. They left in silence that day. No shouting, no threats, just defeat. But I knew this wasn't the end. People who feel entitled rarely give up easily, and deep inside I sensed something darker coming. That night, as I prepared tea, I heard a noise outside. A car door, whispers, footsteps near the back garden. I turned off the kitchen light and looked through the window. 2 unfamiliar men were examining my house, taking pictures, measuring, watching. My stomach tightened. This was no longer about family. This was war. I slowly picked up my phone. "Mr. Thompson," I whispered when he answered. "They're not giving up." He was silent for a moment. Then he said something that sent chills down my spine. "Margaret, there is one more thing about the trust." "One more thing?" "Yes. If your son continues this behavior, you gain the right to remove him permanently from all family assets." My hands froze. Remove him completely, forever. For the first time in my life, I realized something terrifying. The greatest revenge was not punishment, it was indifference, and I was learning it. That night, as I locked every door and turned off every light, I made a decision. I would not run. I would not beg, and I would never again allow anyone, even my own son, to make me feel unwanted in my own life. But what I didn't know was that my son had already made his next move, and it would change everything. That night, I barely slept. Every sound outside my house felt louder than usual. Every shadow seemed to move. The image of those 2 strange men outside my garden kept replaying in my mind. Who had sent them? Deep down, I already knew. The next morning, I woke early and checked my phone. 3 missed calls.
all from my son. No message, no apology, just pressure. I ignored them. For the first time in my life, I refused to respond immediately to him. And strangely, that silence gave me strength. At around noon, my doorbell rang. I opened the door to find a bank representative standing outside, a polite young woman with a tablet in her hand. "Mrs. Margaret?" she asked. "Yes. I'm here regarding your loan application." My heart dropped. "Loan?" I said slowly. "I never applied for any loan." She frowned and checked her screen. "But we received a request using your property as collateral, signed in your name." The world seemed to tilt. Someone had tried to take a loan against my house, without my knowledge, without my permission. My hands began shaking. "Who submitted it?" I asked. She hesitated, then quietly said the name. My son. For a moment, I could not breathe. Not because of anger, because of betrayal so deep it felt unreal. He hadn't just tried to remove me from my home, he had tried to steal it. I thanked the woman and closed the door slowly. Then I sat down and cried. Not loud sobs, just silent tears of acceptance. The truth was finally clear. This was no longer a misunderstanding. This was greed. That afternoon, I called Mr. Thompson again. He arrived within an hour. After reviewing the bank report, his face grew serious. "This is fraud," he said firmly. "Forgery, identity misuse, financial exploitation." The words sounded heavy, criminal, final. "I don't want him arrested," I whispered. Mr. Thompson looked at me gently. "Margaret, protecting him is what created this situation." His words hurt because they were true. For years, I had chosen silence over boundaries, and silence had grown into entitlement. "We must file a report," he continued calmly, "not to punish him, but to protect you." Protect me. No one had said those words to me in years. I nodded slowly. That evening, I went to the police station. My legs felt weak as I walked inside. A mother reporting her own son. Nothing prepares you for that moment. The officer listened patiently while I explained everything: the eviction attempt, the trust violation, the loan fraud. He took notes carefully, then asked quietly, "Do you feel unsafe in your home?" I hesitated, then remembered the men outside my house. Yes. A formal complaint was registered. A legal warning would be issued. If my son continued, the consequences would be serious, very serious. When I returned home that night, something felt different. The fear was still there, but it was no longer controlling me. For the first time, I was choosing myself. 3 days later, my son appeared again. This time, he wasn't angry. He looked desperate. His hair was messy, his eyes restless. "They called me," he said immediately. "The police." I remained calm. "You left me no choice." He paced the room like a trapped animal. "You're destroying my life." I studied him quietly. "No," I answered softly. "I am refusing to let you destroy mine." Then the truth finally spilled out. His business had failed. He was drowning in debt. His wife's family had cut financial support. And the wedding loan he once mentioned had never been for a wedding. It had been to cover losses. Losses he hid, lies he protected, and he believed my house was his solution. "You're my mother," he said desperately. "You're supposed to help me." My voice remained steady. "I helped you your entire life." Silence. Painful. Heavy.
But help does not mean allowing abuse, I continued. For a moment, he looked like the little boy I once knew, lost, scared. But then pride returned, cold, sharp. "You'll regret this," he said quietly, before leaving. The threat lingered in the air. That night, security cameras were installed around my house. Mr. Thompson insisted. Precaution, he said, but we both knew why. 2 nights later, the cameras recorded something shocking. My son's wife, standing outside my gate, arguing loudly on the phone, shouting, "She won't give it. We need another plan." Another plan? My heart tightened. What were they willing to do? The next morning, Mr. Thompson showed me the footage. "This confirms intent," he said. "If needed, we can take stronger legal action." Stronger, the word echoed in my mind. How had my life reached this point? But something unexpected happened inside me. The pain was fading. In its place, clarity was growing. I was no longer reacting emotionally. I was thinking strategically, learning boundaries, learning strength. Days passed quietly. No calls, no visits, just silence. But silence before a storm is never peaceful. It is preparation. 1 week later, a letter arrived. A court notice. My son was challenging the trust legally, claiming I was mentally unfit to manage my own property. The paper slipped from my hands. This was his lowest move yet, to declare his own mother incapable, to take everything, legally, publicly, completely. I looked at the notice again, then at my reflection in the window. The frightened woman I once was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, someone awake, someone ready. I picked up the phone. "Mr. Thompson," I said calmly, "let's fight." But what my son didn't know was that the trust held one final secret, a secret my husband had hidden for this exact situation, and when revealed, it would end everything.
The courtroom was colder than I expected. Not just the temperature, the atmosphere, the silence, the weight of what was about to happen. I sat quietly beside Mr. Thompson, my hands folded in my lap. Across the room sat my son. He didn't look at me. His wife sat beside him, whispering something in his ear, her face tense. For the first time in my life, we were not family. We were opponents. The judge entered. Everyone stood. And just like that, my private pain became public. My son's lawyer spoke first. He argued confidently. He claimed I was emotionally unstable, confused, unable to manage finances, and easily manipulated. Every word felt like a knife, but I remained silent because Mr. Thompson had told me, "Let them speak first. Truth doesn't rush." They presented documents, medical evaluations, witness statements, even old messages taken out of context to prove I was mentally declining. I realized then this wasn't desperation, this was planning. They had prepared this for months. The lawyer finished confidently. "If the court grants guardianship to my client, he will manage his mother's assets responsibly." Manage, a polite word for control. Then it was our turn. Mr. Thompson stood calmly. "No parent should sit in a courtroom defending their right to live in their own home," he began. The room grew still. He presented the trust documents, every paper properly signed, every record verified, every decision clearly mine. Then he showed the attempted loan fraud, the forged signature, the unauthorized bank request. The judge's expression hardened. My son shifted uncomfortably. For the first time, uncertainty appeared on his face.
but the real moment had not yet arrived. Then Mr. Thompson said quietly, "There is one final document the court must review." He placed a sealed envelope on the table. My client's late husband prepared this years ago. My heart pounded. I had never seen this before. The judge allowed it to be opened. Inside was a notarized letter written by my husband, his handwriting, his signature, his voice from beyond the grave. Mr. Thompson read aloud, "If at any point any beneficiary attempts to remove my wife from her home, challenge her mental capacity without valid medical proof, or attempt financial control through pressure or deception," the courtroom was completely silent. "That beneficiary will be permanently disqualified from receiving any inheritance, financial support, or ownership rights under this trust." A gasp spread across the room. My son's face turned pale. His wife froze. They hadn't known. I hadn't known. But my husband had. He had predicted this possibility and protected me. The letter continued, "My wife's dignity is not negotiable. Any child who forgets this forgets their place in my legacy." Tears filled my eyes. Even after death, he was still protecting me. The judge reviewed the document carefully, then spoke clearly. "The court finds no evidence of mental incapacity." He paused. "The guardianship request is denied." Relief washed through me like warm sunlight. But the judge wasn't finished. "Additionally," he continued, "due to attempted financial fraud and violation of trust conditions, the claimant forfeits all inheritance rights effective immediately." The words echoed like thunder. It was over. My son stood suddenly. "This isn't fair," he shouted. Security immediately warned him, but the damage already done. His anger revealed everything. He looked at me then, not with love, not with regret, but with blame. "You chose money over your own son." I met his eyes calmly. "No," I said softly, "I chose respect." The judge ended the session. The decision was final, irreversible. Outside the courtroom, reporters had gathered. Apparently, wealthy family disputes attracted attention. Cameras flashed, questions flew, but I ignored all of them. My son walked past me without speaking. His wife followed, her face cold. No apology, no remorse, just consequences. Mr. Thompson turned to me. "You did the right thing." I nodded slowly. But victory didn't feel like celebration. It felt like closure. That evening, I returned home. My home. The garden looked brighter. The air felt lighter. For the first time in months, I felt safe. I walked into the living room and saw my husband's photograph. "I understand now," I whispered. He saw what I could not. Love without boundaries becomes sacrifice, and sacrifice without respect becomes exploitation. Weeks passed. Silence remained. No calls, no messages. My son was gone from my life, and strangely, peace had taken his place. But life still had one final surprise waiting for me, because sometimes when something breaks, something better quietly begins, and soon someone unexpected would knock on my door, someone who would change everything again.
The courtroom was colder than I expected. Not just the temperature, the atmosphere, the silence, the weight of what was about to happen. I sat quietly beside Mr. Thompson, my hands folded in my lap. Across the room sat my son. He didn't look at me. His wife sat beside him, whispering something in his ear, her face tense. For the first time in my life, we were not family. We were opponents. The judge entered. Everyone stood.
And just like that, my private pain became public. My son's lawyer spoke first. He argued confidently. He claimed I was emotionally unstable, confused, unable to manage finances, and easily manipulated. Every word felt like a knife, but I remained silent because Mr. Thompson had told me, "Let them speak first. Truth doesn't rush." They presented documents, medical evaluations, witness statements, even old messages taken out of context to prove I was mentally declining. I realized then this wasn't desperation, this was planning. They had prepared this for months. The lawyer finished confidently. If the court grants guardianship to my client, he will manage his mother's assets responsibly. Manage, a polite word for control. Then it was our turn. Mr. Thompson stood calmly. No parent should sit in a courtroom defending their right to live in their own home, he began. The room grew still. He presented the trust documents, every paper properly signed, every record verified, every decision clearly mine. Then he showed the attempted loan fraud, the forged signature, the unauthorized bank request. The judge's expression hardened. My son shifted uncomfortably. For the first time, uncertainty appeared on his face, but the real moment had not yet arrived. Then Mr. Thompson said quietly, "There is one final document the court must review." He placed a sealed envelope on the table. My client's late husband prepared this years ago. My heart pounded. I had never seen this before. The judge allowed it to be opened. Inside was a notarized letter written by my husband, his handwriting, his signature, his voice from beyond the grave. Mr. Thompson read aloud, "If at any point any beneficiary attempts to remove my wife from her home, challenge her mental capacity without valid medical proof, or attempt financial control through pressure or deception," the courtroom was completely silent. "That beneficiary will be permanently disqualified from receiving any inheritance, financial support, or ownership rights under this trust." A gasp spread across the room. My son's face turned pale. His wife froze. They hadn't known. I hadn't known. But my husband had. He had predicted this possibility and protected me. The letter continued, "My wife's dignity is not negotiable. Any child who forgets this forgets their place in my legacy." Tears filled my eyes. Even after death, he was still protecting me. The judge reviewed the document carefully, then spoke clearly. "The court finds no evidence of mental incapacity." He paused. "The guardianship request is denied." Relief washed through me like warm sunlight, but the judge wasn't finished. "Additionally," he continued, "due to attempted financial fraud and violation of trust conditions, the claimant forfeits all inheritance rights effective immediately." The words echoed like thunder. It was over. My son stood suddenly. "This isn't fair," he shouted. Security immediately warned him, but the damage already done. His anger revealed everything. He looked at me then, not with love, not with regret, but with blame. "You chose money over your own son." I met his eyes calmly. "No," I said softly, "I chose respect." The judge ended the session. The decision was final, irreversible. Outside the courtroom, reporters had gathered. Apparently, wealthy family disputes attracted attention. Cameras flashed, questions flew, but I ignored all of them. My son walked past me without speaking. His wife followed, her face cold. No apology, no remorse, just consequences. Mr. Thompson turned to me. "You did the right thing." I nodded slowly, but victory didn't feel like celebration. It felt like closure. That evening, I returned home. My home. The garden looked brighter. The air felt lighter. For the first time in months, I felt safe. I walked into the living room and saw my husband's photograph. "I understand now," I whispered. He saw what I could not. Love without boundaries becomes sacrifice, and sacrifice without respect becomes exploitation. Weeks passed. Silence remained. No calls, no messages. My son was gone from my life, and strangely, peace had taken his place. But life still had one final surprise waiting for me, because sometimes when something breaks, something better quietly begins, and soon someone unexpected would knock on my door, someone who would change everything again.